Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles. I, a 32-year-old male, and my wife, 31, have enjoyed a great relationship in our 2 years of marriage. Despite our busy 9-to-5 jobs, office work, meetings, and occasional business trips, we maintained a strong connection. Even when our schedules kept us apart for days, we understood and respected each other's career trajectories. Having a driver was a convenience, especially for my wife, who wasn't fond of driving. The driver was primarily for her use since she had various places to go. We both had our cars, and the driver had been with us since we got married, proving to be competent at his job. However, a few weeks ago, our driver passed away, and we had to find a replacement. After contacting various companies and agencies, we hired a new driver, a young and competent 27-year-old. Despite his good background, I couldn't help but feel skeptical and perhaps a bit jealous and insecure. The new driver's youth and good looks triggered some wariness in me, knowing he would be spending a lot of time around my wife. It wasn't about distrusting her. I trusted her completely. It was more about my uncertainties regarding him. I couldn't shake the feeling that he might try something funny. My wife, being an attractive woman, added to my concerns. After a few weeks of him working with us, I finally brought up the topic with my wife. She reassured me, expressing how great he was at his job and even comparing him favorably to our late driver. Despite my lingering worries, I decided not to voice them out, as she seemed genuinely pleased with his service, and I chose to let my concerns slide for the time being. With time, I got used to the new driver's presence, and it seemed like my initial worries were unfounded. He hadn't caused any trouble, and it was clear that he was doing his job well. About a month into his service, everything was going smoothly. However, some weeks back, I started to notice subtle changes in my wife's behavior. While not alarming, it did seem a bit odd. Her outings, which were usually due to her busy job, seemed to be lasting longer. When I inquired, she explained that her schedule was more packed, and there was nothing to worry about. I chose to believe her and didn't dwell on it too much. Additionally, she appeared to be getting along really well with the driver. She would come home and share stories about how thoughtful he was, staying late because of her and waiting patiently for her to finish work or meetings without complaining. She even mentioned a time when she felt sick and called him to take her to the hospital when I was out of town. Apparently, he rushed over on his day off to help her. She suggested giving him a raise, and I agreed, trusting her judgment. A few days ago, I had to travel again for a business trip. Initially planned for a week, the trip concluded earlier than expected, allowing me to return 2 days earlier. Feeling bad for not spending quality time together due to my frequent travels, I decided to surprise her and planned a lovely night. I even planned to take her out the next day for some quality alone time since it was a weekend. Excitement built up as I reached home, exhausted after a late flight. Upon arrival, however, I noticed that her car wasn't there. This was unusual because she was never home that late, and the driver typically clocked out by 10 p.m. at the latest. I couldn't understand where she could be, especially since she usually informed me if something was keeping her out that late. I met her security guard and inquired about them, wondering if there was an issue with her car that required a visit to the mechanics. The security assured me that nothing was wrong with her car. He informed me that she had gone out earlier and still hadn't returned. I instructed him not to mention my return when she came back and to pretend that everything was normal. He agreed, and I entered the house, quickly dropping off my belongings in my room, removing my shoes, and turning off the lights as they were when I first arrived. I then sat in the living room, waiting for her. About 30 minutes later, I heard her car driving into the compound. I silently waited by the window, observing as she exited the passenger seat, looking all dressed up as if she had attended a special event. The driver also emerged, locked the car door, but instead of leaving, he walked her to the door. I hid by the entryway, waiting as she unlocked the door and dragged him inside. I could see them giggling and kissing. The anger in me reached a boiling point, and I couldn't contain it. I immediately emerged from my hiding place, flipping on the lights, startling them. They looked like deer caught in headlights. My wife began to stutter, asking why I was home and stating that she didn't expect me back yet. She tried to act innocent, but it was too late. I had already seen everything. I didn't need to hear any lies or excuses. Standing at the doorway, I kicked them both out of my house. I promptly fired the driver, instructing him to leave before I called the police. As for my wife, I told her to get off and not bother returning. I assured her not to worry about her belongings, as I would pack them and send them by a courier. I also informed her to expect divorce papers and to sign them as soon as she received them. I shut the door in both their faces and went back into the house, unable to fathom that my 2-year-old marriage had come to such an end. My soon-to-be ex-wife has since left me nearly 200 missed calls and messages. Now for the second story. We've been married for 8 years, together for over 10, and have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old son. My wife also has 3 children from a previous marriage. When we first moved in together in 2013, she quit her job and got an admin job at the company I was working for. During that time, she struck up a friendship with a guy from that company, and they would carpool to and from work. Sometimes he would hang out at our house, and I didn't think much of it, considering it a healthy coworker relationship. I had known this guy before meeting my wife, and he was married. We had even socialized together at Christmas parties, and everything seemed fine. However, my wife only lasted at that job for about a year, and we lost touch with the guy, except for occasional interactions on social media. Fast forward a few years, I quit my job in late 2017 to start my own real estate practice. Since then, our financial situation took a hit, and our lifestyle changed. I used our savings to sustain my business in its early stages, took out jobs and side gigs, and struggled to maintain our previous standard of living. This period of change, coupled with having our second child in 2015 and her oldest moving out in 2018, caused strain in our relationship. By 2020, our relationship faced challenges. I was mentally struggling, and my wife expressed dissatisfaction with our lack of connection. She mentioned craving attention, and our intimate life suffered, with months passing without any physical intimacy. Our routines became monotonous, with her spending all day watching Netflix and me scrolling through my phone when at home. In an attempt to find some solace, I decided to take a trip to see my mom after 3 previously canceled plans. I just returned from a trip to see my mom, and things took an unexpected turn. I suggested my wife come along, but she said she had to quarantine before going back to work. While away, I noticed a weird vibe from her, treating me more like a friend through phone calls and IMs. When I got back, she dropped a bombshell. She felt we were in the process of breaking up. The reasons she cited included the lack of intimacy, my apparent unhappiness, and other issues. I opened up about being in a dark place emotionally, especially regarding our relationship and work expectations. Despite the challenges, I expressed a desire to salvage our marriage, believing we still had a 50-50 chance. We started discussing the future, and I began counseling for my depression. As I pulled myself together, focusing on work, exercise, and healthy eating, my business unexpectedly took off. Despite ongoing uncertainties, we were still sleeping together and trying to figure things out. Then, out of the blue, I received a text from the guy's wife, containing screenshots of my wife and them. They had been meeting up for lunches, exchanging affectionate messages, and expressing their feelings for each other, all happening while I was away, just before our breakup conversation. I've just uncovered even more disturbing details, including a text from 2013, the day I proposed to my wife. In that message, she tells the other guy about our engagement and shares a deeply inappropriate dream involving him. Confronting her, she admits to meeting up with him, involving serious making out. When pressed about pictures in what seems like a house, she can't explain where it is, adding to the deception. After taking a day to process everything, I told her that we're just co-parenting now. I don't want to be with her, and once we figure out the logistics for the kids, I'm out. Her response, claiming this was my easy way out, adds insult to injury. To make matters worse, the guy involved seems to be far from an upstanding person, with a troubled history including jail time and probation. In a fit of rage, I confronted the guy and physically confronted him at his office the next day. He fled, but the encounter made it clear that they both thought they could escape consequences for their actions. After calming down, my wife downplays the situation, considering it a minor mistake. However, I can't shake the feeling that her actions speak louder than words. This isn't the first time she's ended a marriage with infidelity, and to me, it feels like she gave up on us long before confessing. Despite my significant personal growth, making good money, having a successful real estate practice, losing weight, and adopting healthier habits, I'm struggling to see a way past this ultimate betrayal. In my mind, the relationship is irreparably damaged, and I can't envision a path back to love and trust. The level of disrespect and betrayal is too profound for me to consider reconciliation. Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.